I don't know about you, but I have a real sense of we've been here before. We've been arguing about literacy basically since people have been able to read. What are the most effective ways of teaching children to read? The great debate, are we talking about parts to whole or whole to parts approaches? Parts to whole, of course, is what phonics is all about. It's about teaching the correspondences between sounds and the graphemes that represent them. And what it allows, what it enables beginners to do is to decode new words by sounding out or blending. So far, so good. And then there's the other approach. Of course, the two approaches are not mutually exclusive, but there tends to be a tremendous polarization. When whole to parts, the meaning of text is emphasized over the sound of the letters, and phonics in this whole language approach, if you're going to give it that label, is just one component of what's going on. The whole thing is completely stupid because most practitioners agree we need both. Whether you're an advocate of whole language or phonics, both approaches recognise the importance of the relationships between sounds and letters, and that that understanding is the ultimate goal of reading instruction. Let's look at what the international research tells us on this. There's been a whole spate of inquiries. The US National Reading Panel goes back to 2000. That was a very, very important one. They're still fighting among themselves over it. New Zealand House of Representatives in 2001. Australia followed in 2005. And then we had a little splurge of activity around about 2006-2007. There was a systematic review of the research literature undertaken by Torkelson and colleagues in 2006. Steve just referred to the Rose independent review of teaching. And myself and my colleague Naz Rasool did a review of the literature for ESTIN, which is Her Majesty's Inspectorate in Wales. You'll be familiar with what the key terms necessary to be able to understand and take part in this debate. Systematic phonics, synthetic phonics, and analytic phonics. Systematic phonics is basically any method following a carefully sequenced, a carefully selected sequence of letter-sound relationships organised in a logical order. Now, this is what the US thing was talking about. It's the absolute obsession with synthetic phonics is purely a UK fabrication. Most other places talk in terms of systematic phonics instruction. The Idiot's Guide to what's the difference between synthetic phonics and analytic phonics. Synthetic phonics is ka, a, ta, cat. Analytic phonics is ka, at. Yeah. And we've made a huge thing, as you know, about synthetic phonics. Now, if you look at the research literature, the consensus that comes out of it is that systematic phonics instruction is a necessary but not sufficient condition for the teaching of reading. There's also consensus that there is no convincing evidence either for or against synthetic as opposed to analytic phonics. And the weight of opinion favours a balanced approach over either whole language or phonics approaches used in isolation. So, as I said, the crisis over pedagogy would seem to be more manufactured than real. Now we come to the politics, okay? So why did this whole thing about synthetic phonics, where did it come from? Well, most of you will know that it came from the Clackmannanshire study, and it did appear to show absolutely staggering results when children followed a program of synthetic phonics. What is sometimes not recognised is what the authors of that research have to say about it themselves. So they too are very clear that this is only one aspect of effective teaching. I think it's really important to remind ourselves about that. What happened? The Tory party came along and put it in their manifesto. So why, from a political point of view, why would this be such an interesting, such a hot topic? Well, one of the things is that at the policy level, explicit links are being made between the products of schooling, the labour market and national economic performance. So this whole considerable hubbub about having a skilled workforce. The other thing that the other observation, the general observation that you can make is that politicians and legislators are appropriating debates on both the philosophy and the methodology of literacy teaching, which until quite recently tended to be the territory of academics and practitioners. Yeah? So we all know how to read, so therefore we all know how to tell teachers how they should be teaching children to read. So what we end up with is a situation essentially of reading wars. Okay, so when you look at what's been happening in terms of this politicians' appropriation of the debate, 101 bills in the US on phonics instruction introduced into state legislatures between 1990 and 2000. Yeah? This is something that has really attracted the attention of politicians. There are links with religion, and certainly with very obvious political persuasions. It tends to be associated with Republican legislators, and also you can even get, this is an example, uniquely scriptural. Is a program which is saying that in order to teach children, the only spiritually and educationally sound reading instruction method is through the teaching of phonics. I mean, this is mixing up a whole range of factors that really have very little to do with how children learn. Then if you look at the sequence of events in the UK, okay, it starts in 2005 with the Clackmannanshire study, which, as I said, was reporting the very impressive apparent gains of using synthetic phonics. Now, in April 2005, the Conservative Shadow Education Secretary announces that all children in England would learn to use a synthetic phonics approach. Okay, and that was put in the Tory manifesto. Aha! June 2005. The Labour Education Secretary, Ruth Kelly at the time, announces the independent Rose inquiry. 2006, Torgerson's, this is, ironically, this is a review which was also commissioned by the Department of Education, and the Torgerson study finds that there is no conclusive evidence in favour of synthetic phonics. And in March 2006, despite the intervention of NALDIC, which Steve and I were part of, the Education Secretary endorses the teaching of synthetic phonics. Now, this is all about the political implications of that. By coming out in favour of synthetic phonics, it neutralised it as an election issue. Okay? And that to me is absolutely fundamental.